Emma stood at the kitchen counter, her hands hovering over the chopping board as she tried to focus on the simple rhythm of slicing carrots and onions. The warm light from the ceiling lamp made the kitchen glow like a small sanctuary, but it did little to fill the quiet that had settled around her. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of waiting, of something missing that she didn't fully know how to name. It was a Thursday evening, the kind of evening that felt ordinary, but also heavy, as though life had tucked its surprises somewhere just out of reach. Outside, the wind rattled the old windows, carrying the faint scent of rain and distant streets bustling with life Emma wasn't part of. She had moved back in with her mom a few months ago after college, needing the familiar comfort of home while she figured out what came next. But even here, in the place she had grown up, she felt a subtle ache of isolation. Her mom, Linda, hummed quietly by the stove, a soft, melodic sound that always made Emma smile, even when the loneliness in her chest felt heavy. Linda moved with gentle confidence, her hands deftly stirring a sauce that smelled rich and inviting, her eyes catching the flicker of the stove's flame. There was something about her mom in these quiet moments that reminded Emma, how people could carry layers of stories in their hearts. She had always thought of her mom as just her mom, but lately Emma had begun noticing details she hadn't before: the way her mother's lips curved when lost in thought, the small sighs she let slip when no one was watching, the way her eyes seemed to remember something no one else knew. Emma herself had been feeling restless. Life after college wasn't supposed to be this confusing. She had expected excitement, independence, maybe even romance. Instead, there was an emptiness she tried to fill with work, chores, and the little routines she clung to. It's like cooking dinner together, watching old movies, or listening to the rain against the window. And yet tonight there was a strange tension in the air. Something in her mother's glance as she stirred the pot made Emma feel as though a quiet question was lingering, waiting to be asked. "Emma," her mother said, finally breaking the silence. The word itself was soft but carried a weight Emma couldn't ignore. "Do you ever wonder if life always gives us what we hope for?" Emma froze, mid-chop, her knife hovering an inch above the board. She hadn't expected the question. It was simple, but the way her mom said it felt like it carried years of unspoken thoughts. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Linda didn't answer immediately. She tilted her head slightly, watching Emma with a quiet intensity that made Emma feel exposed in the most gentle way. "I mean, sometimes we hope for things. People, moments that never seem to come. And yet, they show up when we least expect them." Emma's mind raced. She had always been a planner, a thinker, someone who tried to map out every step of her life. And yet, in that simple sentence, her mother hinted at something unpredictable, something exciting and terrifying all at once. Emma felt a spark of curiosity flare in her chest, a small pulse of hope she hadn't dared feel in months. The kitchen felt warmer suddenly, though the cool October wind pressed against the windows. The aroma of simmering sauce, garlic, and fresh herbs seemed sharper, more alive, as if the world outside had paused to let this small, quiet moment stretch and deepen. Emma set down her knife, rubbing her hands on her apron as she leaned against the counter. She realized she was holding her breath, waiting for her mother to say more, even though she didn't know what more might be. Linda finally smiled, a soft, wistful smile that made Emma's chest ache with an odd mix of longing and affection. "You know, Emma, love and hope, they aren't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes they're quiet, almost invisible. But when they appear, they change everything without us noticing at first." Emma blinked, feeling a lump form in her throat. She didn't fully understand what her mother meant, but the words struck a chord deep inside her. She glanced at the clock on the wall, noticing how the hands seemed to move slower in that suspended moment. It was like the universe had pressed pause, letting her feel something she had forgotten: anticipation, longing, the subtle thrill of possibility. The front door creaked suddenly as the wind shifted outside, reminding Emma that the world beyond her small kitchen was still moving, still full of unknowns. She realized that tonight something different could happen. Maybe life had more to offer than routines, loneliness, and quiet evenings. Maybe, just maybe, love or hope or a combination of both was about to make its presence known in the most unexpected way. Emma took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. She didn't know what the night would bring, but she felt a spark inside her, a tiny, stubborn flame that whispered possibilities. And in that quiet kitchen, with the smell of dinner filling the air and her mother's gentle presence beside her, Emma understood that some moments are small, unassuming, and yet powerful enough to change everything. And then her mother said something else. Just a few words that made Emma pause and listen with her whole heart. Emma felt her hand still on the counter, the knife forgotten for a moment as her mother's words lingered in the air. Some things change, Linda had said. Some things. Wait quietly for the right moment. Emma's mind drifted, almost against her will, to memories she hadn't thought of in years. She remembered the nights when she was little, sitting at this same kitchen table while her mother prepared dinner. Linda's laughter had always filled the space, a gentle, warm sound that made Emma feel safe. Those nights were simple, but Emma now understood they had been layered with something deeper, kind of quiet love and protection that she had only recognized in adulthood. "Do you remember the summer after I turned 12? Emma asked, almost without thinking. Her mother looked up, a soft smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I do," Linda said. "You insisted on helping me make the strawberry jam, and we ended up with more jam on the floor than in the jars." Emma laughed quietly, the sound echoing softly in the kitchen. "You let me do it anyway." "Course," Linda replied, her tone warm. "Because I wanted you to feel capable, to feel that you could create something on your own, even if it was messy. That's what I've always tried to do for you, Emma." It was a simple memory, yet it carried weight. Emma realized that much of the love she had felt from her mother wasn't just in grand gestures or words, it was in these quiet moments. The little lessons, the patience, the kindness that went unnoticed. And yet, as she grew older, she had begun to see cracks in the simplicity. Life had become complicated, full of unanswered questions, missed opportunities, the unspoken weight of dreams that didn't always align with reality. "Mom," Emma started, her voice soft. "Did you ever feel like something was missing?" Linda paused, her hand still on the pot, her eyes looking toward the ceiling as if searching for the right words. "Yes," she said finally, her voice low and reflective. "I think everyone feels that at some point, even when life seems full, there's a quiet part of the heart that wonders about things we didn't do, chances we didn't take, people we didn't meet." Emma felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. She wasn't alone in her longing. Her mother had felt it too. It made her realize that even the people we think understand everything about us still have their hidden layers, their secret desires and quiet regrets. The kitchen seemed to shrink around them in a comforting way, the hum of the stove and the gentle clinking of spoons creating a soft backdrop to their shared silence. Emma remembered other evenings years ago when she and her mom had stayed up late, talking about life, friendship, and the little heartbreaks that came with growing up. Those nights had been fleeting, yet they had shaped Emma in ways she didn't fully understand until now. "Do you remember that boy from middle school?" Linda asked suddenly, a twinkle in her eye. Emma's brow furrowed. "Which one?" "Michael," Linda said with a small laugh. "You had the biggest crush on him, but you were too shy to ever tell him. I remember sitting here, peeling potatoes, listening to you rehearse what you would say if he ever asked you to the school dance." Emma's cheeks warmed at the memory. You remembered that?" "Of course," Linda said, shaking her head with a soft smile. "I always remember. Those little moments tell a bigger story, Emma, about who we are, what we feel, and the courage we might not even realize we have." The air between them seemed to hum with nostalgia, a mixture of warmth, longing, and the quiet ache of years gone by. Emma realized that the bond she shared with her mother was built on these countless, unremarkable moments that were actually extraordinary shared laughter, quiet guidance, small gestures of love that had left a mark deep inside her. Yet, even with the closeness, there had been distances. Moments when Emma had wanted to share something deeply personal. something she felt might change the way her mother saw her, but had held back. And she could sense that her mother, too, had her own unspoken thoughts, her own fears of opening a part of herself that might not be understood or accepted. Linda stirred the sauce again, breaking the silence with the soft sizzle of garlic in oil. She looked at Emma with a gaze that was both tender and knowing. "Sometimes," she said, "we keep pieces of ourselves tucked away, thinking they're too fragile to show. But the ones we love, they often see them anyway, even when we don't speak." Emma felt the weight of those words. The kitchen clock ticked softly, a steady rhythm that contrasted with the sudden flutter in Emma's chest. She had just returned from putting away groceries, her mind still wandering through the memories of laughter and small confessions she had shared with her mother. The air felt different tonight, charged, almost expectant, as if something just out of reach was waiting to reveal itself. Linda hummed again, stirring the sauce, but her voice carried an unusual hesitancy. "Emma, would you mind stepping aside for a moment?" Curious, Emma leaned against the counter, watching her mother with careful attention. The aroma of simmering tomatoes and basil filled the space, wrapping around them like a warm, invisible hug. Emma's eyes flicked to the window, where the sky had shifted to the soft blues and purples of twilight. The day had passed quietly, yet it seemed ready to give way to something unexpected. Just then the front door creaked open. Emma turned, startled. She hadn't expected anyone else tonight. Standing there, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers picked from a nearby field, was someone she hadn't seen in years. Alex, her childhood friend. "Emma," he said softly, almost in disbelief. I wasn't sure if you'd still be here." Emma's breath caught. Alex had been her confidant during the most confusing years of middle and high school, the person who had laughed with her, shared secrets, and comforted her when life felt too big to handle. And now, standing there with a quiet, hopeful smile, he looked as if he had stepped straight out of one of her fondest memories. "Alex," she said, her voice catching with a mix of surprise and emotion. It's been so long." He stepped inside, brushing raindrops from his jacket. "Too long," he admitted. "I moved back recently, and I guess I hoped I'd run into you. And here you are." Emma felt something shift in the room. Suddenly, the kitchen seemed smaller, warmer, and alive with possibilities she hadn't dared imagine. Her mother watched silently from the stove, a gentle smile on her face, as if she understood the unspoken tension and the sudden burst of hope that had entered their lives. Alex glanced around, eyes lingering on the familiar kitchen, the worn wooden counters, and the smell of freshly cooked pasta. "It hasn't changed much," he said softly. "It still feels homey, like nothing has really moved on, except maybe time." Emma nodded, feeling her heart swell. "Yeah, some things don't change." She paused, realizing the weight of the moment. Here was someone who had always mattered, someone who had once been just out of reach. And now fate toward chance had brought him back into her life. Linda, sensing the tension and unspoken emotions, spoke gently. "Why don't you two help me with dinner? It'll be easier with more hands." Alex smiled a little nervously and stepped closer. Together, they chopped vegetables, stirred sauces, and carried bowls across the counter. Emma noticed how natural it felt to be with him again, the rhythm of their movements falling into sync as if no time had passed at all. There was a comfort in his presence, a sense that even after years apart, some bonds remained unbroken. As they worked, Alex paused and looked at Emma, his eyes reflecting a quiet intensity. "You've changed," he said softly, "but not in a way that feels different from who I remember. You're still you." Emma felt her chest tighten. She realized that despite all the years, despite the distance and silence, the connection they had shared hadn't faded. It was as if the universe had been waiting for this exact moment, a small, unassuming evening where the past and present could collide in a way that reignited something neither of them had expected. Linda glanced at them from the stove, a knowing look in her eyes. She had always understood the subtle currents of emotion, the quiet moments that carried more meaning than words could express. She didn't need to intervene, She just smiled, stirring the pot, letting the young adults find their own way back to each other outside. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the soft glow of streetlights. Inside, the kitchen was filled with warmth, the aroma of dinner, and the delicate tension of two hearts reconnecting. Every glance, every shared smile, every small touch of hands passing a bowl seemed amplified. Full of unspoken meaning and tender nostalgia, Emma realized something in that moment. Sometimes, life doesn't announce its most important events. It doesn't hand you signs or guarantees. It simply nudges you toward what matters, toward the people and moments that remind you of who you are, what you've missed, and what might still be possible. And tonight, in this small, cozy kitchen with her mother humming softly, and Alex standing close once more, Emma understood that fate had a quiet way of rewriting stories one small, unexpected twist at a time. She smiled softly, her heart lighter yet full of anticipation. The night was still young, and the past had a way of blending seamlessly into the present, leaving her to wonder what other surprises might life have in store, waiting just around the corner. The kitchen was quiet, save for the soft clinking of utensils and the occasional sizzle from the stove. Emma and Alex stood on opposite sides of the counter, their hands busy with preparing the ingredients, but their minds were somewhere else entirely. It was as if the past had quietly settled between them, and neither knew how to speak without unraveling the fragile tension that had built in the hours since. Alex arrived. Emma tried to focus on slicing the bell peppers, but each glance at Alex made her heart tighten. He looked so familiar and yet somehow changed, more mature, calmer, but with the same warmth she remembered from their childhood. She wanted to speak to fill the silence, but the words she longed to say clung stubbornly to the back of her throat. Alex, meanwhile, kept catching himself staring at her, marveling at how the years had shaped her without dulling the essence of who she was. Her laugh still had that gentle lilt that made his chest ache in memory, and her thoughtful eyes seemed to see more than the surface of everything around her. He wanted to reach across the counter to bridge the invisible distance, but the fear of disrupting this delicate moment kept his hands still. It was a strange kind of tension, not uncomfortable, but heavy with meaning. Every unspoken word, every hesitation, carried the weight of years apart. Both of them were acutely aware of what they had felt as children and teenagers, the crushes, the fleeting moments of connection, the shared dreams and secrets. And yet now, in the quiet of this kitchen, the depth of those feelings was sharper, more poignant, because time had added layers of longing. And what dash ifs. Emma took a deep breath, finally breaking the silence, though her voice trembled slightly. Alex, I never realized how much I missed this. Missed us being around you. Alex's hand froze mid-motion, the knife he had been using hovering over a tomato. He looked at her, eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and emotion. I know, he said softly, barely above a whisper. I never thought that I'd get another chance to feel this, to be here with you again. I've thought about it so many times, and now it's like the years vanished in an instant. Emma felt warmth flood her chest. She wanted to reach out to close the distance, but hesitation held her back. The truth was, the longing had been there all along, quietly tucked beneath laughter and daily routines. And now that it was staring her in the face, it was almost too much to bear. Alex seemed to sense her hesitation, his own chest tightening. He took a careful step closer, though still respectful of the space between them. Emma, I don't want to rush anything. I needed you to know how I feel. How much these years apart didn't erase what mattered. Emma swallowed, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter. Her mind raced with memories, afternoons spent sharing secrets, walks through the park when no one else was around, moments of laughter that had seemed ordinary at the time but were now golden threads in the tapestry of her life. I feel the same way, she admitted softly. I've tried not to think about it too much, but it's always been there, even when I didn't understand it fully. The room seemed to shift as the weight of unspoken truths began to lift, if only slightly. Their shared history, the longing, the hesitations, all of it was finally acknowledged, spoken aloud in quiet, careful sentences. Emma could see the relief and emotion mirrored in Alex's eyes, and she realized that the unexpressed feelings had been building for years, waiting for a moment exactly like this. Linda watched from the stove, her heart quietly swelling for both of them. She had seen the subtle ways Emma had changed over the years, the small silences and lingering looks. And she understood now why her daughter had always seemed a little restless, a little wistful. Sometimes love didn't need to be loud or immediate. Sometimes it simply waited for the right moment, and that moment was now. Emma looked down at her hands, then back at Alex. "I don't know why we waited so long," she said, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "Maybe we were scared. Or maybe life just had to teach us patience." Alex nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. "Patience," he repeated. I think it made us ready. Ready to appreciate this, to understand it, to make it matter." For a few quiet minutes, they worked side by side in silence, the unspoken words now lingering gently in the space between them. Each glance, each small smile, each careful movement was a conversation in itself, a recognition that what they felt for each other was real, lasting, and worth acknowledging. The kitchen no longer felt ordinary. The familiar walls, the smell of simmering sauce, the soft glow of the eve. The kitchen had grown quieter as the evening wore on. Outside, the sky had turned a deep indigo, and the soft glow of the streetlights seeped through the windows, casting gentle shadows across the familiar room. Emma and Alex continued to work side by side, stirring the sauce and arranging the dishes. But a tension lingered in the air, unspoken, yet undeniable. Emma's mind raced. Every glance at Alex, every shared smile was heavy with memories and possibilities. She wanted to speak, to tell him everything she had kept inside for years, but the words seemed to float just out of reach. Meanwhile, Alex moved with careful grace, a small smile tugging at his lips, yet his eyes betrayed a quiet struggle. Something had to break the silence. Something had to force the truth into the open. The moment came unexpectedly. A small accident sent a dish slipping from the counter. Emma reached for it instinctively, and their hands touched. The contact was fleeting, yet it carried a weight that neither could ignore. They both froze, eyes locking, the soft clatter of ceramic echoing like a signal for something deeper. "Emma," Alex began, his voice low and deliberate, as though speaking too quickly might shatter the fragile balance they had held. "I've been holding something inside for far too long." Emma's heart pounded. She nodded slightly, encouraging him to continue. Though part of her was terrified of what he might say, "I never wanted to admit it before. Not when we were younger, not when it might have seemed impossible," he said. He took a slow, deliberate breath. "But I've always cared about you. More than a friend. More than just someone I laughed with or shared secrets with. You've always been the person I think about, the one who stayed in my mind even when life pulled us apart." Emma felt a tear slip down her cheek, warm and unbidden. The truth she had longed to hear, the words she had dreamed of over years of quiet longing, were finally here. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. "Alex, I feel the same way," she admitted, her words trembling but honest. "All this time I thought it was just nostalgia or memory, but it wasn't. I've missed you. I've missed what we had, even if we didn't understand it fully back then." For a moment the kitchen was utterly still. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated their faces, and the quiet hum of the stove became a gentle backdrop to the raw, unfiltered emotions that finally poured into the room. The years of hesitation, unspoken feelings, and quiet longing seemed to dissolve in the warmth of their confession. Alex reached gently, but respectfully, and took her hand. "I know we've both been scared. Life moves fast, and we were always trying to figure it out before we could understand how much we truly meant to each other. But maybe it took time for us to see clearly." Emma squeezed his hand, a soft smile breaking through the tears. I think that's true. Maybe we needed the years to realize what really matters. And now I'm ready. I'm ready to see where this can go, to stop letting fear keep us apart." There was a pause, a quiet breath shared between them, as if the world itself had softened to give them this single, precious moment. The weight of the past, the nostalgia, and the unspoken truths had built up to this turning point, a moment where honesty, courage, and longing finally met. Alex's eyes glimmered with emotion. "Emma, I promise I'll do my best not to let us drift apart again. I want to be here fully, and not just in memory or imagination, but really, here, with you." Emma's chest swelled with warmth. She felt an unexpected lightness, a sense of being seen and understood in a way she had never experienced before. "I want that too," she whispered. "I've waited for this without even knowing it, and now it feels right." For a long moment they simply stood there, hand in hand, hearts beating in quiet synchrony. The rest of the kitchen, the simmering sauce, and the soft evening light faded into the background as the emotional weight of their reunion filled the space. Every hesitation, every unspoken word, every small regret of the past had led them to this single transformative instant. Linda, who had been quietly observing from the stove, allowed herself a soft smile. She didn't intervene, didn't speak, because some moments were too delicate for words. She understood that love, in its truest form, often required patience, courage, and the right timing. And tonight, her daughter and her childhood friend had reached that perfect, fragile intersection. Alex finally leaned back slightly, still holding her hand, and let out a small, relieved laugh. "I can't believe it took us this long," he said, shaking his head gently. "But I'm so glad we're here now." Emma laughed softly too, a sound mingled with tears and joy. "Me too. More than I can say, it feels like coming home in a way I didn't realize I was missing." The kitchen was quiet now, but it wasn't the heavy, expectant silence of before. Instead, it felt full of warmth, understanding, and the gentle satisfaction that comes when long-held emotions are finally shared. Emma and Alex stood side by side, cleaning up the last of the dishes, their hands occasionally brushing against one another. Each touch was light, almost accidental, yet it carried the weight of everything they had unspoken for years. Emma felt a serene smile tug at her lips. The heaviness she had carried for so long, the waiting, the longing, the what-ifs had lifted. Somehow, it seemed that the universe had waited with them, nudging them toward this moment, toward clarity and understanding. Her heart was full in a way she hadn't experienced since childhood, a mix of nostalgia, joy, and the quiet comfort of finally being seen. Alex glanced at her, eyes reflecting the same gentle warmth. "It feels like everything finally makes sense," he said softly. "Like all the pieces we didn't understand before were just waiting for the right time." Emma nodded, feeling the truth of his words in every fiber of her being. I think that's exactly it," she whispered. "All those years apart, all the moments we didn't say anything, they led us here. And now it feels like we finally belong in the same place at the same time." Linda, who had quietly returned to her own tasks by the stove, smiled softly. She had given them the space they needed, knowing that some lessons in love and connection could not be rushed or guided too forcefully. Sometimes life needed patience, observation, and quiet faith. And now, seeing Emma and Alex standing together, she felt a deep satisfaction. Her daughter had found someone who had cared for her for years, someone who could understand the depth of her heart. The night outside had settled into a peaceful calm. Rain from earlier had left the streets glistening, reflecting the soft glow of streetlights like scattered diamonds. Emma moved to the window, gazing out at the world beyond, and felt a sense of quiet hope bloom within her. She realized that life, with all its twists, delays, and surprises, had brought her exactly where she needed to be. Alex joined her at the window, standing just slightly behind, close enough that she could feel his presence without needing words. For a few moments, they simply looked out together, sharing the silence of the evening, letting the calmness of the world outside mirror the newfound peace inside. Finally, Emma turned, her eyes meeting his. "I don't want this to end," she said softly, but with conviction. "Not this feeling. Not us." Alex smiled, reaching for her hand once again. "It doesn't have to end, Emma. Not now, not ever. We've waited long enough. Let's move forward together carefully, patiently, but fully. Let's make the moments we've missed count from here on. Emma felt her chest tighten with joy, a happy ache that made her heart swell. I'd like that, she said, her voice steady now, full of certainty. I'd like that very much. They returned to the kitchen table, sitting side by side with mugs of tea in their hands. The simple act of sitting together, sharing warmth and conversation, felt profoundly intimate in the most wholesome sense. They laughed quietly at small memories, spoke softly about their hopes for the future, and allowed themselves to savor the quiet moments that had seemed so elusive for years. Linda, watching them, felt a gentle pride, not because of anything dramatic, but because of the subtle power of love, patience, and understanding. She had seen firsthand how relationships could grow quietly, how emotions could build over time, and how sometimes the simplest gestures, like cooking together, sharing a story, or simply being present, could change everything. Emma realized, as she sipped her tea and felt Alex's hand lightly brush hers, that life was often unpredictable. Yet unpredictability didn't always mean disappointment. Sometimes it meant that the right people, the right moments, and the right feelings arrived just when they were meant to. It was a lesson in trust, patience, and the beauty of human connection. As the evening drew to a close, Emma and Alex stood at the doorway, looking out into the quiet streets, their hearts lighter and their spirits connected. They didn't need grand declarations or elaborate plans. The knowledge that they had finally found each other, that the unspoken truths had been acknowledged, was enough. Thank you, Emma said quietly, looking up at him, for waiting, for caring, for everything. Alex smiled, holding her gaze. And thank you, Emma, for being patient, for believing, and for letting me back in. The night felt infinite, soft, and full of possibilities. And in that simple, quiet home, surrounded by the aroma of dinner and the gentle glow of evening lights, love had found its way. Not in a rush, not in drama, but in the slow, steady, beautiful unfolding of truth, patience, and understanding. They stepped outside together,